Welcome to the Quality of Life podcast, where we explore how hospice and palliative care may enhance quality of life for patients living with a serious illness. Here is your host, hospice and palliative care leader and educator, Dr. Millicent Burke-Sinclair.
Hello and welcome to the Quality of Life podcast. As many of our listeners know, our organization serves many counties throughout western North Carolina. In late September, Hurricane Helene hit our area, devastated many parts of our region. Many in our community have experienced loss and trauma because of these events. Four Seasons offers grief services to our community every single day. But as we recover and rebuild, we are hoping to help our neighbors and our own staff to move forward with strength through associated grief. To help us talk through this today, we have Jay Wilson, our Four Seasons Child and Adolescent Grief Coordinator, and Daniel Tipton, our Grief Services Coordinator in our North region. I'm really pleased to welcome Jay and Daniel. So Daniel, would you tell us a little bit about your background in grief counseling?
So I've been working with folks who are experiencing grief and loss for the last 4 years as a grief coordinator at Four Seasons. And before that, I served Four Seasons as a chaplain and in other healthcare opportunities before I came to Four Seasons as a trauma chaplain and a grief counselor at various different trauma centers and hospices throughout East Tennessee as well.
Thank you for sharing that. And I have a question for you, but the question will be for both you and Jay. So Jay, would you be willing to share some background with us about working with children and teens, especially in the grief space?
Yeah, so I have been with Four Seasons in this role for about 2.5 years. I've worked with children and families going through various traumatic events. I've worked with sexually abused children. I've managed facilities for abused children. I've worked with children and families going through the court system because of conflict. So many different roles with working with children and their families going through grief and traumatic situations and different losses.
Thank you for sharing that. And, you know, one thing that I think about in relation to Hurricane Helene, our area of western North Carolina has not experienced something like this in many, many years. I mean, at least not in my lifetime. And so I'm thinking about, with both of your backgrounds, for the listener who may be having thoughts and feelings that they say, why am I still having these thoughts and feelings? Or when will this end? Could you share some perhaps words of wisdom with them? Because I want to be really sensitive to our listeners in saying, we're here and we care. And there's not necessarily an end point that one should say, you're going to just feel back to normal. But we're here to help you feel the feelings that you want to have, need to have, and know that whatever you're thinking about, we can help you. So what would you say to someone who's just like, I've got so many thoughts over this, I just don't know how to process?
I would start by just acknowledging first that this is hard because it's hard. Not because we are weak or unable or we have any deficiencies within ourselves. This is just hard. This is an impossible situation. Natural disasters like this seem to be things that happen to other people, right? We are not used to that. Our mountains protect us from these things. And so if you grew up in these mountains like I did, basically on the other side of the hill in Tennessee, we're not used to having the mountain be such a fragile and sometimes a difficult place to navigate. We trust the mountains. we understand them. Loss like this type of natural disaster, this type of grieving is not impossible, but it's just complicated. Complicated by the fact that we are doing something we've never had to do before in generations. I think 100 years ago, maybe there was a flood similar, but none of us alive today were probably there at that time. And definitely this is something new for many of us. It's a brave new world, if you will, for us to have to navigate. So we're not quite used to how to live with mountains that aren't as trustworthy as we may have thought they were. We believe in these hills and we trust that they're going to stay strong for us. And then the weather changed and we experienced something that took us by surprise. So we start there by just recognizing that this is hard because it's something we've never had to do before. It's also hard simply because loss is loss no matter the loss. And so what many of us are experiencing, even if we came out of this storm physically and intact, right? Our homes are safe, our families are safe. We didn't lose anything but maybe a few branches from the tree, and we lost the convenience of power and water supply for a few days, maybe a couple weeks. What we're experiencing in this loss isn't necessarily the direct losses that some of our neighbors and community members are facing, but the indirect loss of watching the people we love suffer. And that in and of itself begs us to grieve, and it makes us feel a deep connection of empathy, so that every social media post, every news article, every picture or story that we hear demands a little bit more of our empathy. And so we are feeling these secondary indirect losses because we are watching the people we love suffer. And we are powerless to really change that. And it hurts. It hurts for us to be powerless. It hurts for us to feel as if we cannot fix the things that are broken around us.
Thank you for sharing that. And Jay, we'll see what your thoughts may be as well. But I did come away with a question that listeners may be wondering is, yeah, like I'm feeling a lot of what you just said. So what do I do?
In any grief, in any loss, there are only two ingredients to healing. One is time, and the other is intention. Grief takes the time it takes. There's no time limit. There's no time frame. There should not be any expectation of when you should feel better. There's no expectation of when the grief should pass. We really have to let grief just exist for a while. And so grief takes the time it takes. The nasty truth about grief is it lasts forever. Grief is not something that we accomplish within a few weeks or a few months, and we become sort of experts at it in an instant and never have to do it again. Grief just takes time. Grief also healing from grief takes intention. Doing things on purpose with purpose. And that requires us to pay attention to three very important and vital sources of healing. I call them the three wells. And these three wells are our physical wells, our emotional wells, and our spiritual wells. These are the three wells we draw strength from to be able to just navigate the world on a regular sort of everyday basis. When we're experiencing loss, especially traumatic loss, our wells tend to empty faster. We expend the resource quicker. The physical well is how we relate to our own personal bodies. It's how we think, it's how we feel, it's how we move our bodies. The physical well is the well from which we draw strength to be able to go out into our neighborhoods and move tree stumps, help neighbors put tarps on top of their roofs, to help pick up litter and to pick up debris. It's the physical well that allows us to lift gallons and gallons of gray water just to be able to have some hygiene in the bathroom and pick up buckets of water to be able to take home and drink. And so as we're trying to navigate all of that, we're expending our physical well's resources. That well, to intentionally fill that well, to give that intentional, purpose-driven sort of attention, we have to rest. We have to allow our bodies to recreate itself. We have to allow our bodies to take breaks from the physical labor of this recovery process. And so as we're moving forward through all of this, we have to remember that our bodies are going to get tired and we're going to get exhausted. So paying attention to how you rest yourself. Rest does not have to be sitting still and doing nothing. rest can be recreative. Rest is restorative. So rest can be taking a gentle walk with your family after dinner, walking around your neighborhood and just looking at all the things that have changed and paying attention to the people who are still there. It can be going and observing the leaves changing colors, paying attention to the fact that we're still in early fall. I noticed this the other day when I drove up to the office, that the trees that line the street in front of our office were beautiful. And I hadn't been paying attention to that because I've been so focused on everything else that I had forgot to physically look at the beauty that's still around me. So paying attention to our physical selves, resting when we can. The emotional self is how we relate to others. The emotional well is all about how we receive and therefore in reciprocity give empathy. This is the one well we cannot fill on our own. Empathy has to be poured into us. Every day it is demanded of us to show empathy to the world around us. Every time we see a neighbor suffering, empathy. Every time we see a friend who just wants to sit and talk about the storm and just tell their story, it demands empathy. Eventually, we're going to run dry until someone pours into us. And so this is where I tell my clients when we're talking about this, it's important for us to let the people who love us, to receive the gift of empathy from other people, because it's the one gift we cannot give until it's been given to us. We have to intentionally seek out empathy. The spiritual well is not necessarily about religion or religious practices, even though those can be part of it. The spiritual well is about recognizing something bigger than ourselves. It's about drawing our attention away from where we are in the moment to sort of raising our eyes up and recognizing that we are part of a larger human experience. Grief lies to us and tells us that we're doing this on our own and that no one else really understands what we're going through. The truth is, we all grieve. If we have the ability to love or to make attachments to people, places, or things, when those attachments get severed, we grieve. So grief is the one thing that makes us human. And it's the one thing we all have to do. We just don't know how. And so utilizing our spiritual well allows us to recognize that we are part of a bigger story. We're part of a narrative that goes beyond just our moment here in these mountains through this storm, to recognize that we are part of a larger community. If you want to use religious language, a great choir of witnesses who have had to go through this in other places. It's a fellowship, if you will, of suffering that makes us part of something bigger than just our personal experience. And in doing that, we recognize that our story is added to, not taken away from someone else's story, but it's adding to the larger narrative. We fill this well by recognizing our place in the human family. Recognizing through art, through music, through stories on TV, movies, plays, anything that sort of connects us to a greater story. We feel connected to the larger narrative. And intentionally paying attention to these three wells and allowing ourselves time, we will move forward better at a pace that is intentional and healing instead of just letting things sort of happen, doing things on purpose with purpose.
You know, I love the phrase that you used of moving forward. So often people say, I want to feel better. I want to even be able to support others. And so what you talked about with those three wells, that's really powerful tools for the listeners who are saying, what do I do? I know it's going to take time, but I don't want to feel like how I've been feeling, right? Or I don't want my children, my teens, to keep having to feel what they're feeling. But the reality is we're going to have feelings. But I love that you said with a focus and intentionality around the refilling with those 3 wells. And that made me think, Jay, what would you say to listeners who have children or teens that they care about? And how can they help support, and how can we help support children and teens?
Absolutely. So I think the important thing to remember is that what happened is real. It's a reality that we are all living in and that we're going to have to live in for a while. There are reminders all around us. You know, there's the mud, there's the trees, there's friends that might not be sitting next to us because they've been displaced, or they may have died or had to move for financial reasons. So those reminders are all around us, and it affects everyone from the pastor to the therapist to the police officer to the fast food worker. It's important to remember that nobody is really immune to this. Even myself, the other day, there was a event that took place in Asheville that I wasn't aware of, and I was on the highway, and all of a sudden I kind of got stuck. And there was a point during the storm where I had to make some decisions about my kids and going to check on other family, and being stuck anywhere was very scary for me. And it took me back there pretty fast. And we're, how many weeks away from the storm. And I didn't realize, until a few minutes after, that my reaction was in relation to some of the things that I had witnessed and been through because of the storm that came through. And that's going to be a reality for everybody for quite some time. The truth is, like Daniel said, is trying to take this away from children is not the right route to go, because it's not going away, right? Grief, like Daniel said, is something that we live with. It will change over time, but it's not just going to be taken away. And there are times in our lives where we get so desperate for something very, very tangible answer, something deeper than it'll just be okay, or something deeper than a distraction. And this is probably one of those times for a lot of kids where they are probably looking for something deeper than a distraction, or something a little bit deeper than it'll just be okay. Because the truth is, for some of their friends, it might not be okay in the way that we had hoped. It's important to remember that our relationship with our children may not necessarily have evolved or changed just because there was a crisis. And what I mean by that is there are families sometimes, that adults really, that kind of assume and push, because we've had this, earth-shattering event, that my child is going to come to me and we need to be really, really close, and we're going to talk, and it's going to be a natural flowing thing. But that's just not the case. The truth is, sometimes these events really offer opportunities for us as parents to start to build some of those trusting relationships with our kids that we may not have had before. So what that means is your kids may not talk directly to you about the storm or directly about what they're feeling, but that doesn't mean that they won't eventually. I've seen in a lot of these situations where parents really push and assume that now my kid's going to open up and talk to me now. Now our relationship has changed because of this thing. But really what people tend to do is lean into what they know. Right. So if you don't have the relationship with your child already to where they feel safe and comfortable talking to you about their emotions and some of these deeper things, what may happen is right now they may even go into a deeper shell, or they may remove themselves even further away from you because their feelings are so raw and they're so sensitive right now. They don't necessarily want to be around things and people that don't take care of that sensitivity. But it doesn't mean that has to last forever. It's an opportunity for us to start to build that. And eventually in time, hopefully all of the rest of those things will fall in line. But making sure that we are just having normal, safe conversations with our kids to build on being able to talk about their deeper feelings is important. Not being really, really pushy. What we feel as adults isn't necessarily what kids are feeling. Adults do a lot of assuming, right? Because we're older, we've seen things and we know things came out of us, or our blood is running through them. But in a lot of ways, our kids are different. They have different experiences. They may have grown up totally different than the way that you did. They have different influences. They're not you, and they don't feel the same as you. They don't think the same as you. And when we don't listen to understand, and when we don't kind of take the cues from them about what it is that they need, then we can really lose something bigger for the future. Pain and heartbreak and hurt is something that the longer we are blessed to live, the more we are going to experience. So this moment is important, but it's also important because we're teaching them about the future also. We're teaching them about the next natural disaster. We're teaching them about the next death. We're teaching them about the next job loss. We're teaching them about the next time, we get broken up with. So it's bigger than just the surface things of saying it's going to be okay, let's just move forward. We're teaching them lessons about how to live and how to cope and how to be healthy adults that are able to live with loss and suffering and grief in a way that's healthy for us, in a way that people can see us living in a way that can encourage them, just because we're able to be healthy people that are able to make it through this. It doesn't have to break us in a way that is unhealthy or unsafe, but it can put us in a position to where we are vulnerable and desperate enough to where we do really start to slow down and step back and maybe build some of the things that were lacking before the storm.
One of the words that you said made me think similar to what Daniel mentioned. When Daniel said moving forward and you said opportunities, both of you have given some really intentional thoughts around how can we move forward, but still realize that we have to give space and place and honor what we're feeling, what the children and teens are feeling, and not rush, but be open. And so at Four Seasons, we have a way that we can help people move through their feelings and be having the wells, in a sense, at least impacted through our grief services. And so I wonder, this first question goes to Daniel, but our grief services team provides individual and group counseling to patients and family members, and I'm really proud of that. But one thing that our community might not know is that we also provide grief support to our community who may not have ever even been served by us directly, say through hospice care, for an example. So could you tell us a little bit about how that works?
One of the most amazing things, and this is me being honest, about Four Seasons is its commitment to the community.
I love that.
I have been with Four Seasons for 7 years now. I have worked in previous for-profit hospices, nonprofit sort of educational hospitals, teaching hospitals. There is something special about Four Seasons and its commitment to the community and from which it grew. Four Seasons is a grassroots organization that was born from the passion of people who loved their community. And so we carried that with us some 42 years later, right? We are still the local hospice. We are, and even though we've expanded our reach into many parts of Western North Carolina that even 7 years ago when I first started, we weren't even touching yet, Four Seasons is dedicated to our community. And one of the things that makes my job doable is the way in which our foundation supports community outreach. And our foundation works tirelessly to be able to provide no-cost grief support to anyone in Western North Carolina in the 14 counties that we serve, individual or group support at the loss of someone they love. You can't get that in other places. You just can't. And I know it's sort of like people are like, oh, you're just, you're talking to your boss right now and you have to say these things. But I wouldn't, I'm not that kind of person. I honestly am amazed at how hard we work to provide this service. And I get feedback from people all the time, community members who are amazed at how generous we can be with our support. Hospice clients automatically get enrolled into our bereavement program. Families of our hospice patients and our palliative care patients even have access to our bereavement program. And that's normal across the board, sort of hospice care, right? That's what that's what we do. What Four Seasons goes above and beyond is offering not just to the people that we serve through the hospice program, but anyone in Western North Carolina who has experienced the death of someone they love can receive individual one-on-one grief support through a trained counselor, and they have access to our grief support groups as well. And we offer our grief support groups not just once a quarter. We are constantly offering new things. We have regular ongoing Zoom access groups, in-person groups. We have a grief group called Grief 101, where we talk about the basics of the grieving process and introduce people to what it means to grieve. We offer seasonal events, such as coming up here in a few weeks, a holiday survival 101, how to live through your first holidays without your loved one. We have an annual memorial service in December called The Longest Night, where we kind of remember around the time of the solstice the people that we've lost for the year before. We have a spring seminar, an expressive arts seminar, where we use arts and body movement and just get very creative in how to express our grief. And we're offering to our community a couple of different intentional responses to Helene with a 6-week Zoom group specifically for people who have lost a loved one due to the storm. This is a 6-week group that goes from November 6th through December 11th. It's that 6 Wednesdays at 11 a.m. for an hour. It's a safe space to talk about what you've lost, about how you feel, and how you hope to be able to move forward as you heal. We are also offering a one-time Zoom. The best way I can describe it is almost like a debriefing, naming our loss session, where Jessica Godfrey, my cohort here in the Hendersonville office, and I will lead a conversation on naming our losses. Typically what we do is we work within the realm of loss through death. But this particular group is going to be a 1-hour Zoom group where, regardless of your loss, if it was the loss of a person or the loss of your home, or just the general loss of your sense of safety and well-being, you can come and name your loss, get a couple of maybe pointers on how to breathe through that, and be introduced to the types of supports that are out there to you. And it's just one of many different ways we are trying to just love and care for our community right now. And you don't have to do the Zoom groups. If you are more interested in one-on-one counseling, then based on where you live, you can call our main number and ask for grief services, and they will connect you to a counselor.
Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I think is important that our listeners hear is that loss from the hurricane will look very different, most likely, for many people. And so Four Seasons wants to give a space for you to feel listened to and supported, regardless of what form or forms of losses you experienced, because grief matters and grief needs support. And so, you mentioned about our foundation. Since 1979, we've existed for one primary cause. Our mission is to co-create the care experience. I like to throw in co-create the best care experience or the most trusted care experience. And the reason why I say that is I go back to the word community. And I don't know if our listeners have looked at the word community before, but going through Hurricane Helene, and even leading up to it, it made me think about the word community. It has for co-creating in there. It has unity for making sure that we are listening and really hearing, as you said, Jay, what our community needs, and adapting and proactively preparing to support our community in ways that perhaps our community didn't even know they needed. And so this is an example of us co-creating, us listening and unifying to say, we want to be part. But since 1979, when we were founded, our founder and the group of generous volunteers that started out said, we want to ensure that anyone who needs access to care has it, regardless of their ability to pay. And so there's no difference with this at this point. At this point, we say, what does our community need that we can help with? And we have continued to provide, because of our tremendous employees, our generous volunteers and donors, we've provided constant care and access to care, whether it's in person or virtually. This is another way, though, for people that say, I might not have a serious illness or be at end of life, but I am grieving and I need help. And so to move forward, to have opportunities, this is a way that we say, hey, we're going to be part of our community even more than what we are every single day, and help anybody with any level of grief need because of what we've all recently experienced with the hurricane. And so I'm really proud that you shared some ways. And I would encourage our listeners to pay attention to our social media, pay attention to our website, pay attention to our podcast, pay attention to Four Seasons, because Four Seasons genuinely cares about every single person in our community or connected to our community. And that's one thing beautiful about this time that's been really difficult. We've seen the community near and far come together and co-create. And again, that's why we exist. So thank you for showcasing and sharing that, so many people are going through so many things, and we're not an organization that's expecting people to just move forward like it didn't happen. We're saying we want to help provide support and safe space and some even tools as you journey forward. And so this makes me think, Jay, we know that you work with so many children and teens throughout our region. Could you talk about some types of programs and services that you are offering and that are offered both before the hurricane and after the hurricane?
Absolutely. So the Compass program, I was going to say this before Daniel, but he got to me first. The Compass program really is the most unique program that I have ever been a part of. I mean, I have worked with several mental health agencies in the area, and if I haven't worked with them, I know of them at least. I will say that Compass really hits all the marks. I mean, we are able to serve people who can't afford professional mental health support. We're able to serve people who can't get to professional mental health support, which are two things that I'm, very passionate about. And that just doesn't happen in a lot of places. And you're being served by, like Daniel said, these trained professionals, yes. Mental health professionals, people that have been steeped in this type of work for a long time, which is something else you really don't necessarily get with a service that you really don't have to pay for. As a mental health professional, I'm able to work with children and families and develop care plans that are truly what they need, because I'm not worried about necessarily billing. I'm not worrying about somebody telling me you can't do this because we're not going to pay for it. I really get to look at the kid and the family and work with them and really get them the support that they need without having to worry about those things, which is a really, really powerful and unique thing. One of the services that we provide that I get to do is to go into the different schools in the area and provide the support. And that's a really, really big deal, because again, you're dealing with people sometimes that can't make it to an office to get support, and they certainly can't afford the time off from their jobs to get the support. So being able to go into the communities where these children live is such a powerful thing. And and it's not just going to see the clients. Oftentimes I walked in the schools and have sat down and have talks with teachers just because I'm there. They pull me to the side. Hey, can you talk to me for 15 minutes after you get done? Or can you talk to the principal? Can you give us some education? So just being around, I think just being around the program is an asset to the community. We also provide education. So it's not just one-on-one support in the schools. Many times we've been to many different places, from churches to schools to local businesses, to provide education about children and grief and families. We oftentimes tailor the training and education to what it is that you're looking for. You can call and we'll work with you to try and get that. We also do offer office visits. So there are some times where, kids don't necessarily want you to come to their school, right? So we do offer office visits, where that might be an issue. We also do Compass meetups. So basically those are community events where we partner with local community businesses. And we have had many that have been so generous to us and allowed our kids and us and families to come and talk about their grief and participate in activities that we use to help educate about grief. And it gives an opportunity for kids and families to meet others that are experiencing a loss. Not sometimes a peer support can be more powerful than even professional support. So we also offer those opportunities. But talking about the co-creating, the wonderful thing and the powerful thing that I have experienced through Compass, through the storm, is I'm not doing a group right now, mainly because the schools and the communities ask, we just need somebody in person right now. And to be able to offer that is such a huge relief to the community, that we do have somebody that can come out and see about these kids and see about the school, and the community as a whole has been such a powerful thing. I'm not even sure that Four Seasons realizes how powerful and what a benefit the Compass program really is, and what goodwill it creates in the community as a whole. So, having the flexibility to tailor what it is that we do to the need of the children and families is something that we do. Sometimes I don't even see the kids. Sometimes I just walk alongside the parent to help them support. Sometimes I just encourage the parent, because really a lot of parents have the skills and ability, our caregivers in general have the skills and ability to support their child. They just need somebody else to say, you're doing a good job. You're doing it right. You're doing exactly what I would do. So we provide that as well.
As you were talking, the word of focus for Four Seasons this year is impact. And if we all just pause for a minute and think, we have been really impacted. And impact is a powerful word. It's a word that brings life. It can also bring a lot of feeling. You can have tremendous positive impact, and you can also have the exact opposite. And so one of the things that I thought about as you were speaking, and it connects back to what you both have been sharing, is there are different seasons that we all go through. There are seasons where things may be better, may be the opposite, but Four Seasons is here throughout whatever season to partner, to journey, to move forward together. And we realize that even when there's been adverse impact, when there's been an impact that's not desirable, there is still hope and help. And that's many of the reasons why Four Seasons exists, to provide that hope and that help. And even though we can't change the storm, we can't change the adverse impact, but we can help in changing maybe how we approach our next steps by giving support, by unifying together to say, it's okay to have thoughts and feelings, and it's normal. And I think as listeners, I would love to encourage us to just kind of pause in moments that you experience and realize it's okay to reach out for help. It's okay to not know what to do. But at Four Seasons, we genuinely care. And we want you to pick up the phone or go to the website and send an inquiry and just say, I don't know what you can do, but here's something that I'm feeling. And the good news about Four Seasons is, if we don't have that resource, we can oftentimes connect with our community to find resources and to make that hope and that help even more possible. And so when we think about forward movement together and positively impacting lives, I would love to conclude with asking you both a question. What would you want our listeners to remember when this time of listening to the podcast ends? What would you like for them to still connect with in their mind?
I would say that there are days where you're just doing the best you can, and that's enough. I know as a parent, through this, there are sometimes I wish I had got up and cooked my kids some eggs and a nice big breakfast, but what I had in me was a Pop-Tart. that's what I could do this morning because I have all this other stuff I got to figure out and do. And as parents, as caregivers in general, sometimes we can feel guilty about that. We've got work, we've got kids, we got to figure out the water. Our neighbors are hurting. Our parents that we're taking care of need this and that. And it's exhausting. It's mentally, physically, and spiritually draining. And then we kind of beat ourselves up when we get to the end of the day and it feels like all we did was stumble all day long. I felt that a lot through the last few weeks. But if you stumble through the day and you made it to the next, you got there. You got there, and your kids are there, and you're there, and that's okay. Some days it's not gonna feel easy. But if you've done truly the best that you could, that is really good enough. That is really good enough. And your kids are going to see it. Your kids are going to know that you did the best that you could when they step back and they get older and they get perspective on things. So really just giving yourself some grace to just kind of know that stumbling through the day is okay. You just make it to the next one and try again.
I agree that the amount of grace that we often don't give ourselves, that we offer everyone else instead of ourselves, it's almost a crime to me. You deserve as much care and kindness that you are pouring into other people. This is something you've never had to do before. You're not going to be good at it right now. Like any first-time job, you are going to learn as you go. And in 40, 50 years, when you come to retire from your grieving job or whatever you want to call it, you're going to look back and you say, I did this and I can do this. I'm better at it now. The job didn't get easier. You just got better at doing it. And it's the same way with grieving. And the only other reminder I would give people is that none of this is right. None of us should have to go through this. None of the things you are experiencing are right, but we're going to be okay. And we will move forward together. And in doing that, we will show ourselves and the world around us just how resilient these mountains are, and that we are not victims. We are overcomers. We are pioneers. And we come from a long line of people who have endured hardship after hardship. And none of this is right, but it's okay.
It's pretty amazing when you think about so much of what was just shared is wisdom that can help us get through each day. Just, putting one step in front of the other or one thought after the other thought. And as I was listening, several words stood out to me. And as a listener, I would say, I hope that you heard words like help and hope, grace and kindness, care, and you fill in the blank. Because there's been so many words intentionally shared today that it would be desire that you come away feeling cared about, feeling like there is hope and help. The way forward through any impact, again, whether good or just hard, it's not always predefined. We don't necessarily know what's going to come today, what's going to come tomorrow. But what we do know is that people care. Our community cares. And so for our listeners, if you say, guys, I want to be a part of this. I need to be a part of this. Simply call us. Go to our website. You can be a part by simply reaching out and saying, I need help, or I know somebody who does, or I want to donate because I care. So wherever you are today, if you say, I just barely could lift my head off the pillow, that's okay. We care for you. We're here for you. And sometimes in our life, we may feel alone. We may have just suffered a pretty devastating loss of a loved one, of a home, of a car, of a whatever. And when you think about whatever that is in your own life, just remember that it is okay to ask for help. It is okay to believe that there's hope again. And we're here to help you. So Daniel and Jay, thank you so much for joining us today. Listeners, thank you for listening. So if you're interested in our grief services program or any other ways that Four Seasons can support you throughout our service offering all throughout Western North Carolina, please visit us at fourseasonscare.org or like and visit our Facebook page. Give us a call. We care about you. We look forward to co-creating with you.
The Quality of Life podcast is produced by Four Seasons, the care you trust, providing award-winning quality hospice and palliative care to Western North Carolina. For more information, visit fourseasonscare.org or call 866-466-9734.